This is the seventh Vial of Wrath, part 4, and in this part we're going to look at the meaning of the great city being divided into 3 parts. And now we come to what is perhaps a more difficult matter to deal with, and that is the great city being divided into 3 parts. We are dealing with the present time, so we can't look to the older historicist writers for an understanding of this because they didn't live long enough to see how history was to unfold. So let's read now Revelation 16 verse 19. And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. Firstly, let's remember a couple of things. When we looked at the 6th Vial of Wrath, we saw this trinity of evil coming forth onto the world stage. 3 unclean spirits coming out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. The purpose of these unclean spirits coming forth was to draw the kings of the earth and the whole world to battle. And again, I will remind you that it is important to remember that at this point in Revelation 16 verse 14, where we have the phrase the whole world, the prophecy moves from the confines of the former pagan and papal Roman empires to become truly global. Now we have had World War I and World War II, and no doubt worse is yet to come. So when we get to the 7th Vial of Wrath, we have to take on a global view of things. A lot has developed since the likes of Eliot and the Horae Apocalypticae and other earlier historicists' writings. They didn't live long enough to see the course that world history would take, so we can't look to them to provide a detailed historical commentary concerning the 7th Vial, because they simply passed away before events unfolded. We have to look at this ourselves and understand what the prophecy is relating to. The earlier historicist writer John Gill does provide some interesting commentary on Revelation 16 verse 19, and he says, "And the great city was divided into 3 parts, by which is meant not Christendom, distinguished into Protestants, Papists, and Neutrals, which has been long the case, nor the city of Jerusalem as inhabited by Christians, Jews, and Turks, or Christian Jews and Islamic people." Now this is a popular view to what that verse means when the great city was divided into 3 parts. But John Gill says no, he doesn't believe that that is what is intended. And then he says, nor the city of Rome itself, the seat of the beast. He says, not even Rome itself or the Vatican being divided into 3 parts suits the meaning of this prophecy. And then he says, but the whole Romish jurisdiction, which is the great city that reigns over the kings of the earth, as it will now be divided into 3 parts. And I guess the question is, what is this whole Romish jurisdiction that is in the earth today? Now, Charles Jennings, in his book, The Book of Revelation, develops this idea further, although he possibly didn't read John Gill's book, but he says this: the 3 parts of the city are the political, economic, and religious aspects of the one world order of modern Babylonianism. So what he's saying is that the whole world system that we have today is part of this Romish jurisdiction referred to by John Gill. Now again, he's not referring to John Gill, I'm just putting related thoughts together. The city divided into 3 parts are the political, economic, and religious aspects of the one world order of modern Babylonianism. These 7 vial judgments are not the final means of bringing a death blow to the Babylonian system. The death blow will only come as pictured in chapter 19. So let's understand this. When the city is divided into 3 parts, that is not the end of the city, as Charles Jennings is pointing out. That death blow will only come as pictured in chapter 19, when Christ himself shall descend from heaven with his armies to render to Babylon her final doom. So, he concludes, man's attempt to build a one world government will fail. And I'm going to add, amen. Also, Robert Carangola provides a brief comment on this in his book, The Present Reign of Jesus Christ. And just taking a little excerpt, he says, spiritually, political, and economically, Babylon is judged. From the Patmos story by W.G. Finlay, we read, whereas previously in the Revelation, the phrase, the great city, had its identifying marks of Sodom and Egypt, thus representing Rome as the main theatre of operation, Revelation 11 verse 8, in the context of the seventh vial, no such qualifying mark of identity is provided, and one is left to search for its meaning in the context of the seventh vial. And once again, we need to remember that that context is now global. Then he says, as is obvious, the sphere of operation of the Trinity of evil is the world. For no country or people is free today from the insidious coercion of the one world propaganda. The world is likewise divided into three parts. 1, the communist section. 2, the so-called free world. And 3, the uncommitted nations. Now, as to whether or not you or I agree with his commentary concerning those three parts is neither here nor there. What I want to get to is what he says next, which is, however, it is stated that the tripartition of the world was reminiscent of Great Babylon, an order of existence which was a familiarity not to be missed today. In its heyday, Babylon exercised a threefold influence on all who came within its compass, which may be summed up as ecclesiastical, economic, and militant. So we can see that the more recent historicist writers look at the prophecy and they correctly see its development to take in the whole world, not merely just the European setting, the former territory of the old Roman Empire. Additionally, they see the machinations that are quite obvious, and that is there is a major effort afoot to roll out a new world order in its fullness. Right now, in 2022, this appears to be what will happen by the end of this decade, if not sooner. Now, I am not stating decisively that this will occur. However, the crowd of people who see this as inevitable is growing rapidly every day. And we must also remember as historicists that all these people are basing their assumptions on no intervention from God. And on the Christian side of things, the majority are looking for 7 years of great tribulation, a coming man of sin, a mark of the beast, and so on and so on. And so we can't get much useful information from any of these people. So to summarize the matter, the great city is Babylon, and it is divided into three parts. This Babylonian system takes in the whole world, and its power or its influence takes in three great pillars which uphold it, and they are the pillars of ecclesiastical, economic, and political or military power. So the question is now, where in the world do we look for these three pillars? And this is where it might become controversial for some, and for others it's going to be old hat, I am sure. The pillar of Babylonian ecclesiastical anti-Christian power that operates in this world is easy to identify, and it is centered in Vatican City and flows out from there into the rest of the world. What national leader, person of so-called high standing in a nation, or perhaps Christian megachurch operator or other high-profile professing Christian person does not want to pay homage to Rome and to be seen pictured with the Pope? They all line up dressed in black and are subject to the Vicar of Christ, the replacement Christ, the Antichrist. While situated within Italy and in the city of Rome, the Vatican is actually not part of either. The Vatican is a true relic of the old Roman Empire and has its own sovereignty, its own judicial system, its own police force. It has a ceremonial army called the Swiss Guard. It has its own bank, its own coat of arms, and it has embassies with 87 countries around the world. Vatican City is under the control of the Jesuits and the Pope and is the wealthiest institution on the face of the earth. The material wealth, gold, precious artifacts of the Vatican is so great, its land ownership so vast, that it is simply impossible to calculate its enormous wealth. And of course, part of the issue here is that it operates in secret. It is without scrutiny. Its influence is real and it is truly global. After languishing under the 5 vials of wrath, which we considered in previous parts, the Vatican was propelled onto the world stage, and this time it was to become truly global. And this happened in 1929 with the signing of the Lateran Treaty, and we read about this from the Vatican's own website, which says, "The Lateran Treaty is the agreement which was signed in the Lateran Palace in Rome on the 11th of February 1929 by Italy and the Holy See, which recognized the Vatican as a sovereign and independent papal state, and it was confirmed by the Italian Constitution of 1948. Now, we should note that this treaty was brought about with the aid of the fascist government of Mussolini, but even with Mussolini out of the way at the end of World War II, it was nonetheless ratified by the Italian government. And so one should never underestimate the power of the Vatican and its adaptability to deal with absolutely anyone. The Nazis in Germany, the fascists in Italy, to get the job done. Now, the article continues, but opposite to the expectations of many Italians that the treaty would diminish the worldly power of the Pope, instead, it made the Church more internationally recognized. So clearly, the result of the Lateran Treaty, by the Vatican's own account, has been to increase its reach and influence, and now this is truly global. The article continues, until today, the treaty still has a clause that threatens Italians with a 5-year imprisonment in case someone tells a joke about the Pope. Well, with the way that censorship is going on nowadays, one wouldn't be surprised to see that one pulled out of the hat and used. It continues, the Lateran Treaty had 3 parts, namely a political treaty, which gave Vatican its own microstate, a financial convention which gave Vatican compensations, vast amounts of reparations were paid to the papacy, and a concordat which, giving the Holy See privileges within Italy and stating regulations establishing relations between the Catholic Church and Italian state. Mussolini's success in signing this treaty was said to be his greatest achievement in his career. Here we see a picture taken from the top of St. Peter's Cathedral, and we can see in the courtyard out the front, an Egyptian obelisk centered in a circle or disc with spokes coming out from its center. The obelisk is a phallic symbol, and the disc in the middle is the woman's genitalia. This is a place described in Revelation 18 verse 2 as Babylon the Great, the habitation of devils and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. It is found here and it flows out into the world. Before I end this first part, the following news article from 28th of April this year was brought to my attention recently, and it's everywhere out there. It's a story about what Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Republican US representative from Georgia, recently said. This article is headed up, Marjorie Taylor Greene says Catholic Church is controlled by Satan, in remarks on bishops and the Catholic League. Marjorie Taylor Greene said in a statement that she believes Catholic bishops are satanic and accused them of destroying our nation through their support of migrants. Then she said, I stopped attending Catholic Mass when I became a mother because I realized that I could not trust the church leadership to protect my children from pedophiles and that they harbored monsters even in their own ranks, Miss Green said. Now, she's just stating the facts of the matter, and I doubt that she realizes how close to the truth she actually is. This Revelation series has been filled with a record of the wicked deeds and exploits of the papacy and the Church of Rome, and so it's not necessary for me to mention any of this again. The 19th century saw the papacy lose its temporal ruling power in Europe, but it did not put it out of business. The Lateran Treaty of 1929 propelled the papacy onto the world stage, and this time it was truly global, and there it remains as of now and is a tremendous force of evil in the world, influencing nations the world over, and many Christians are going along hand in hand with her, and those that don't separate themselves will be partakers of her plagues. The scriptures are quite clear. Revelation 18 verse 4, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Amen. And with that, I'm going to end part 4. The fifth and final part will pick up immediately on where I have just left this.